So the New York Giants came out of the bye and got upended by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 30-7 in what was the Giants' ugliest game of the season. They have now lost 6 in a row and they are 2-9. What in the world do they do to get out of this slide? We'll talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown. Hi again, everybody. Paul Dottino on the Big Blue Breakdown live. So glad you could join us on a Monday night. We usually do this program at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time every Wednesday night, but we're going for a Monday night show this week because of the Thanksgiving Day holiday. Got to head to Dallas for the broadcast with the Giants and the Dallas Cowboys coming up Thursday afternoon, the national doubleheader game at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So obviously that kind of causes a lot of conflicts and a lot of schedule juggling, as they say. So what did we do? We decided that maybe we'll come at you on a Monday night this week and see if you guys like it. You know, maybe Monday night's a better night for you guys as far as this program is concerned. I don't know. We kind of thought when we started this program at the beginning of training camp that the live show on Wednesday in the middle of the week would serve best because we could recap what happened last week in the game and then also preview what's going to be coming up. But I don't know. We're going to see how it works. For those of you who are brand new to the show, it's real simple. There's a link below the screen here. You see it kind of moving along there? If you go to the link, you can actually get on and do a live video call with me. If you prefer, keep your camera blacked out and we'll just do a live audio call. Or, as always, with all these YouTube shows, you can always go to the chat on the side. Now, I'm a paisan. I'm a people person. I love to talk. So I really get a big charge out of being able to talk to people instead of having to communicate through the chat. So please, by all means, don't be bashful, don't be shy. I'll be glad to talk to you. Everybody can have an opinion. It can be vastly different or exactly the opposite of an opinion that I have. I only ask one thing, that you keep it factual, that you keep it respectful, and if there's some inaccuracy that is involved in the opinion, let's talk about it. Let's see if we can clear up that inaccuracy. And then if you still want to have the same opinion, you're entitled to do so. But perhaps, maybe after you learn some of the other things that may be involved, you might decide you change your opinion. One thing that we do know, the Giants did have their ugliest game of the season in their loss to Tampa Bay yesterday. And the shame of it is that their 3 worst games of the 2024 season have been home games. The opener against the Minnesota Vikings, then a few weeks back at home against the Philadelphia Eagles, and now this one against Tampa. There are 3 games where they laid eggs, where they were not competitive and were just really bad, are the 3 games that they played, or 3 of the games that they played at MetLife Stadium. Their only 2 wins have come on the road, as you know, against Cleveland and also against Seattle. All right, so as we go through the show, let's see what we got over here. We got some people already joining us on the chat, and we got some regulars. We got Big Blue. Hello, Big Blue. There you go. We're going to give you a little pop over there. There you go with the little naming thing that they do here on the YouTube channel. Christine's over here. Hey, Christine, great to see you as always. Well, at least to see your name and your name tag. We see you that way. Big Blue wants to know, what do we got here? I can accept losing, but when there is no effort, it's unacceptable. If it happens Thursday, then Dable must go. Looks like the locker room has abandoned ship. All right. Big Blue, I think that is one of the key elements over the course of the final 6 games now, because there have 6 games left starting with the Dallas game, that every reasonable owner is going to look at. So as John Mara evaluates, and Steve Tisch, of course, evaluates where this franchise is going to go in January, he will be looking back at the tapes. He will be looking back in his memory at the practice sessions, because John Mara is at practice. Every day that he's at the facility, he walks out and watches practice. He listens, he sees, and he takes it in. And with every one of the coaches who have been around for the past decade, whether it was McAdoo or whether it was Judge or Shermer and now Dable, before any decisions were made to either retain or to release any of those people, and it's going to be the same with Brian Dable, John Mara is going to take in all of that information. He's going to be at practice every day. He's going to watch. He's going to listen. Then he's going to watch and listen at the games. He will have conversation. And after the season is over, he will try to clear his head, look at the data, and make a decision. That's the way he prefers to do business. A lot of owners, well, maybe they don't have the same framework in their decision-making process. But that's what John Mara does. He has done it for years and will continue to do it. Now, whether or not that provides a result that each and every one of you out there likes, I can't tell you the answer to that. Maybe you'll agree with his decision, maybe you won't. About the only thing that I can promise you is that ownership is going to dive in head first and chew on all of the evidence before they decide to do anything. Now, in terms of the game yesterday, as I say, I believe it was the ugliest game of the Giants season. And to be honest, I think just for a moment, to talk about where it turned. And oh, you know what? Let me go back to Big Blue, your comment about effort. I've watched most of the game. I'm still not quite finished. I was down at the facility today, was involved in the Dable press conference. I was also able to co-host Big Blue kickoff earlier this afternoon. And I've been going through my stats and my spreadsheets and everything off the game. But in terms of what I wanted to do was just sit back, and after all my notes and all my numbers and stats, were already in the books, I wanted to just sit back again and this time take another look at the game in a dark room, all 22, the full field, not the television copy, but the coach's copy, the full field, and just watch it in a dark room all by myself, no distractions. Let me watch and let me just mark down anything that I see that may not look too kosher. That's what I plan to do, because while I'm going through the plays and I'm checking on things and I'm watching and I'm saying, okay, that was a third down play. I got to mark that down. That was a zone blitz. All right, they sent 5 on that. All right, the right guard didn't pull on that. Let me mark that down. You know, I have a pad that I use, or you guys can't really, but you kind of see that, right? And I mark down not just the play-by-play as the game's going, but I have specific notes that I mark to myself because I watch about 5 different things on every play, okay, including the formations. And I mark that stuff down during the game. And then when I go back and I review the game, I'm looking at specific plays and specific things that I want to go back and I want to double check. And then I've got to fill out my spreadsheets. I have specific spreadsheets for different categories that the Giants and the NFL doesn't give you. I've got spreadsheets for the team's success rate and what happened in the scoring zone, which is the 30-yard line or in. I've got a drop passes spreadsheet. I've got touchdown passes allowed. I've got sacks given up. I mean, and it takes quite a long time to get through that stuff. And while I'm watching these particular plays, I've got to get those spreadsheets all added up and totaled up. So what I'm going to do, Big Blue, because I want to be honest about this, I'm going to watch the all 22 straight through in a dark room and just sit back, and I'm simply going to mark down instances if I thought maybe things were a little sketchy and not as full of effort as maybe you would like. Brian Daboll in general today said he felt the team gave good effort and he wasn't particularly upset with any of it. He later on during the conversation with the media did indicate that there was, for the most part, he kind of clarified and said, there were a couple of things. So in general, he was happy with the effort. He was satisfied with the effort in general. He said he went through it with his staff with a fine-tooth comb, which is what I'm going to wind up doing, okay, probably at 2 o'clock in the morning tonight when nobody else is awake and I can just sit there in my dark room like Aaron Rodgers and I can watch the tape and pick it apart. Dable said he went through it with the staff with a fine-tooth comb, and there were some instances that maybe needed to get up to snuff. So let me make that very clear. And I don't necessarily know if that was portrayed exactly the way Dable explained it during the course of the afternoon. All right. So let me just get that out of the way. Big Blue says everybody's grabbing out there, grab, nobody's tackling. Big Blue, one of the problems is that the Giants are not getting enough takeaways. Now, you've heard the stat, I'm sure, right? The Giants have gone now 11 games, and they have not won the turnover battle in a single game. They've either been even or lost the turnover battle. And you remember what Tom Coughlin used to say all the time, right? If you lose the turnover battle, the stats prove you're probably going to lose. I think the numbers are crazy. Like if you're -2 in a game, you lose like 85% of the time. I think if you're -1, I don't know exactly what the number was, but it was a hefty number over 50%. So the Giants are either below or even in turnover ratio for each of their first 11 games of the season. That is certainly one underlying factor why they are 2-9 and why they've lost 6 in a row. It's not the only one. People, don't get upset. Don't come after me on the chat and say, well, no, there's a whole bunch of other stuff wrong. Of course there is. There's no question. But we're just going to start with the basics. Turnover ratio is a major factor for all NFL teams. All right, so the Giants have one stinking interception. Their defensive backfield has 0 because Darius Muasau, the rookie linebacker out of UCLA, caught a tip pass that Dexter Lawrence got his paws on in the opening game against the Minnesota Vikings. And that's it. No interception since. That's dreadful. As I understand it, they've got research on the turnover ratio going back to 1950. And this string of 11 straight games without winning a turnover battle apparently is a Giants franchise record. That's how historically weird this season has been for this team. Okay, so one of the things we heard from Coach, defensive coordinator, as a matter of fact, Shane Bowen this past week, going into this game with the Buccaneers, is that he was hoping that the guys at the line would have more of a concentrated effort on getting their hands up to deflect passes, because deflected passes at the line have a much greater chance of being picked off. They're virtually anybody's ball once they get batted up in the air. That's one thing they were emphasizing. The other thing that they were emphasizing was hand fighting at the point of the catch. So potentially, if you're knocking hands with the receiver, you can knock that ball up in the air and potentially come up with a pick. Those are two things they were really telling their guys, got to do a better job. Hand fighting at the point of the catch and getting those hands up and try to bat it down at the line of scrimmage to get the opportunities for more picks. The other thing, of course, is the strip sack. Remember, O.C. Umenyiora was the master of the strip sack. That one season that he had, I believe it was 10 strip sacks, which, if I'm not mistaken, tied the NFL record, or it's since been tied. O.C. used to say, a sack isn't good enough. A sack is terrific, but I want the ball. So he was a specialist at going for the strip sack. He wanted that ball to pop free every time he got to the quarterback. It wasn't enough just to bring the guy down. Well, that was the third thing that Shane Bowen told us this past week, that they were telling the guys, when you get back there, try to knock that ball out. Let's get some strip sacks. The sacks are good. Giants are, they're in the mid-30s in sacks. In fact, I don't have the updated number here. Let me see if I have it in my other bag. 1 second. Nope, I didn't bring it in the other bag. All right, but I think they got like 36 sacks on the season. But, they'd like to get more strip sacks. So they're trying to get more takeaways. They're emphasizing these are the things you must do to potentially create those opportunities, but they're not happening. So, to your point, Big Blue, what happens when you try to create turnovers? You try to punch the ball out. You try to claw and rip the ball out, right? And when you try to claw and rip at the ball, or you try to chop at the ball, or you try to punch at the ball, what does that mean? It means you're not wrapping up. So that's always a very, very, very difficult line to walk. I don't know if that was part of the problem yesterday, because the missed tackles, we talked about this. The Giants are up over 70 missed tackles for the season, and that's just not acceptable. But yesterday, was there so much emphasis on trying to do these things that will create turnover opportunities that guys got even more sloppy with their tackling technique and then did not wrap up as well as they should because they were overly focused in trying to get the ball free? I'm hypothesizing that. I'm not saying it's true, and I'm not blaming that scenario for the entire season of missed tackles. I'm not. But I know Shane Bowen emphasized that this week. It could have been part of the problem against the Buccaneers. Could have been. All right, Big Blue, that's my long-winded answer for you, and I hope that takes you behind the curtain just a little bit. All right, what do we have here? Patrick Clark, I think you're new to the program. Don't think I've seen you up there before. Do you think Mara had an influence on signing DJ to the big contract? I think that was the only big mistake made by Joe Schoen other than not taking his fifth-year option. Prevented us re-signing guys. Well, here's what I can tell you. And if you did watch the Hard Knocks show, you know how John Mara felt about Saquon Barkley, right? And Joe Schoen, the general manager, made the final call on that decision, and John Mara did not push a button. He did not pull a lever. He did not pull a string. John Mara, very simply, gave his input. He told Joe Schoen what it was that he, preferred, and the general manager made the call. That's exactly what happened with the quarterback. When the Giants were trying to figure out if they should give the extension to Daniel Jones after the 2022 playoff season, there was that conversation, I'm sure, from ownership because big money was going to be involved. So you obviously, when you're going to write that kind of check, you're going to talk to ownership about it. So I'm sure that John Mara had an opinion and had a preference. But as we've seen, he is not making roster decisions. That was up to Joe Schoen to make the call with significant input from Brian Daboll, the head coach, who was going to have to work with that quarterback. Obviously, offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, I'm sure, was part of that as well. He must have had some input into that deal because at that point he was the offensive coordinator and the guy who called the plays for the Giants' 2022 playoff season. So my answer to you is no. I think that John Mara, when he said we did everything we could to screw this guy up, I think that was his opinion. And I think he shared the opinion of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll that the 2022 playoff season the Giants had was going to be the new floor for Daniel Jones. See, that was the idea. Everybody who rips that extension doesn't go backwards to the time of the deal. And that's the thing about Monday morning quarterbacks and people who do the whole hindsight is 2020 thing. They're a bunch of fools. When you go to evaluate a decision, you have to go back to the time the decision was made, understand what the facts were, what the options were, and what the realistic outcomes were going to be. Now, at the time, Daniel Jones had a career year. He had played winning football, had brought the Giants back with 5 fourth-quarter come-from-behind victories, and then a 6th one in the first-round road playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings in a very hostile, jam-packed stadium, all chanting, "Skol!" So the thought was that this is his floor. Daniel Jones is only going to get better from this. That was the logical, reasonable expectation. That's why he was signed to the extension. It's that simple. And what happened? In 2023, start of the season, Andrew Thomas gets hurt in the first game against Dallas. Pass protection crumbles. A historically bad offensive line is left on the field following that blocked field goal when Thomas got hurt. Daniel Jones had significant issues trying to work behind it. Other guys started getting hurt as well. Then he rips his ACL, and that season is in the toilet, and it's nobody's fault. And you have to finish with Tyrod Taylor and Tommy DeVito. Okay. So now what? Now you've got 2024. Daniel Jones is undergoing a significant ACL rehab, a career-threatening injury. Certainly with today's technology, a lot of these guys come back and they come back well. A handful and a half are able to come back in about 9 months. That's what Daniel Jones did. Got back. Not only did he make it for the season, but he made it for the first day of training camp and did not miss a practice. He did a phenomenal job with the medical folks and the training staff to get back as soon as possible to give himself and this team a chance to compete. And what happened? Inconsistencies throughout the season, not just on the part of Daniel Jones, but also on the part of the entire offense and defense as well. And so now we sit here where we are, and because Daniel Jones was inconsistent, because there was a injury guarantee locked into his contract for $23 million for next year, which would have really been incredibly expensive considering the situation. Business-wise, regardless of what you thought about Daniel Jones on the field, because it's clear that as this season was going on, although he played well against Washington, in the loss a couple of weeks ago against the Commanders, not the Panthers game. No, he had a share of poor plays in the Panthers game. We've already documented those. Missed receivers, some poor throws. That's a fact. The game before against the Washington Commanders, Daniel Jones played really well. First month of the season, outside of the Minnesota game when nobody played well, Daniel Jones had a string of 4 consecutive games where he played well. But everything else around him was not well. Kickers getting hurt. Receivers dropping passes. Guys fumbling the ball in the offensive zone. Guys committing penalties, getting touchdowns called back. Sacks in key spots of the game. When you're in position to get some points, a sack takes you out of scoring range. The combination of all of those things together with Jones's inconsistencies started this team in a rough spot. And then as the season went on, over the course of the last month, Jones had one good game. The game against Washington. As I go back, he didn't really play that great against Philadelphia. Was okay against Pittsburgh. It was okay. Almost brought him back. Then there was the terrible interception at the end, which was a poor and ill-advised decision, and he will face up to that. That's part of that inconsistency that I talked about, because he had done some good things in that game and then made the most unclutch play of the night. Played really well against Washington. Did not play well against Carolina. Had some moments, but again, also had some tough ones too. Some poor throws that were missed. The one pass to Tracy that was intercepted because Jewell made a terrific play at linebacker. So Jones's inconsistencies over the past month became more and more of a problem. Not early in the season, but later during the course of this schedule. So here's the problem. Now with the season where it is, and the injury guarantee where it is, business-wise, there was no choice. This is what happens. So I know, Patrick, that's a long-winded answer to your question, but I thought it was important. There are so many people. Look, I believe in Daniel Jones's talent and ability. And you also know what a pro he is from everybody around the facility who has told you what a great guy he is, what a great teammate he is, what a hard worker he is, what a class act and what a respectful act that he is. So yes, I was all behind Daniel Jones. The funny part is there are people out there who seem to believe that I only have seen the good plays and never saw any of the interceptions, never saw any of the poor throws. But when I tell you that there were interceptions, there were missed throws, there were some times where he held the ball too long and took sacks that he shouldn't have taken, and there were flat out inconsistencies and some unclutch plays, specifically over the last month. See, I said it. It's there. I've been saying it on Big Blue Kickoff, and I've been saying it on this program. Now, because I haven't necessarily spelled it out in text on my Twitter page, maybe that's why people think that I was totally ignoring some of the bad stuff. Never was. It's there. I just put it into perspective because I also see all the good plays that were made. And no matter what people say, I'm going to add this too, Patrick, before I move on to the next tweet or the next chat. When I think about Daniel Jones's legacy, I think about a lot of quarterbacks over the course of their Giants career who never got them to a playoffs. And I could go over a slew of names here, but I don't want to bore you with those. Daniel Jones did something real special in 2022, almost like what, if you're a basketball fan, what Jeremy Lin did for the New York Knicks when Linsanity took over for one season. Danny Dimes was a big deal. He never liked that nickname, by the way. DJ was the one that he liked. But people started calling him Danny Dimes, and he was almost like a cult hero. There were t-shirts and merchandise. Danny Dimes all over the place. He earned it. He deserved it. And I thank him for that season. Because the Giants in 2022 weren't supposed to do anything. And Daniel Jones, with the help of one of Saquon Barkley's two terrific seasons as a New York Giant, not only got them to the playoffs, which was totally unexpected, but got them a road playoff win in Minnesota in what was a terrific, terrific football game. And if you go back, if any of you DVR'd or VHS'd or Blu-rayed or DVD'd, however you decided to make a copy of that Minnesota playoff game, if you did, do yourself a favor. Go back when you get a second and watch that game. Daniel Jones was outstanding in that playoff game. And think about how great, if you're a Giants fan, how great you felt at that moment about that season and about that playoff victory. Because that's also part of Daniel Jones's Giants legacy. It's not just what happened over the last 2 years, the injury and the inconsistencies. No, that's not the entire legacy. The legacy also includes a sensational, exciting, thrilling, and dramatic run to the playoffs, and then the cherry on top with a first-round playoff victory in which he was spectacular. My piece on Daniel Jones has been said. We will now move on. Thank you, Patrick, for your comment. Joseph, who do we trust more? The owner who has given us McAdoo, Shermer, Judge, and Gettleman, or Dable, who has clearly lost locker room and allows neighbors to get away with whatever he wants? We have become a lost franchise. Well, Joe, the only thing I could tell you is this. The Giants truly operate as a body of work. You can't really separate them. And why do I say that? Because the way they do business, and I'm not being critical of you at all, but I just want you to understand the way they do business. Brian Dable's the head coach. He goes out to practice every day with the team. They do what they do. Joe Shane comes out and watches. John Mara comes out and watches. Occasionally when Steve Tisch comes to the facility, he will go out and he will watch. Brian Dable and Joe Shane, knowing each other as they do for years, having been basically tied at the hip in Buffalo, they constantly talk. And as we have been told by both Joe and John, and also Brian Dable, they also are in daily communication with ownership. So from the owner to the GM to the head coach, all of them know exactly what the other guys are thinking, and they're all sharing their thoughts and opinions on what they might hypothesize about, what they might predict, what they might be disappointed in, what they think could be a possibility. I mean, you name it. This group is in, as we've all been told, constant communication. This is not one of those franchises where the owner looks at the football team as a hobby or a toy or as one of his businesses. That's not the way it is with the Giants. For the Mara family, this is their livelihood. This is their business. So John Mara is all in his role atop the chart of the hierarchy of the New York Football Giants. And so the GM and the head coach are all in with him. Now, I don't know if that helps you with your question, or if that helps you understand that they really are unified in most of their thoughts, beliefs, and opinions. Now, the only thing I will say, as I mentioned earlier, is that with the Giants, the general manager does still make the final call on player acquisitions. That doesn't mean ownership doesn't get involved in the contract sometimes. You have to when the numbers are so large. But the GM is ultimately making the personnel decisions. So that's the one caveat here. That's the one caveat. The GM is the one who retained Daniel Jones with the extension, understanding that that's the direction Dable was going in, and understanding that that was also an opinion shared by ownership. And I think that's the only way I can answer your question, because, you know, to separate these three individuals and to think, well, I want to listen to him for this, or I want to listen to that guy for that, or I don't necessarily think that I want to listen to that, or I only want to listen to this, or I'm not sure if this is one angle and this is another angle, or if this is really what's happening or that's really. I don't think you can separate them, because all three are homogenized. Even if some decisions are ownership decisions in terms of overall franchise moves, and personnel decisions are GM decisions in terms of roster moves, and coaches' moves are who plays once they're on the roster. That's the best I can do for you, Joseph, because I don't know any other answer. It's the most honest and complete answer that I have. Okay. Big Blue says here, losing the turnover battle, and when was the last time we had the lead? You know what? I'd have to go through all my game notes from each game book and so forth and so on. I'm not really sure. Let me think about this a minute. Oh, where did the Giants score first? What game? Big Blue, I tell you what. I don't know that it's worth the time necessarily to go through that research right now just to come up with that answer. But you are right. You are right. For a lot of the season, a lot of clock time, game clock time, the Giants have been behind. And that's never a good scenario, especially if you're trying to play complementary football. We hear that word or that phrase all the time by Brian Dable. When you're supposed to be a middle-of-the-road team, complementary football is the most logical way to go. That's the best way to go in terms of realistically giving your team a chance to win. Right? You want to play field position. You want to be smart with the ball. You want to make sure you execute the fundamentals, and then occasionally get a big play if you can. And, of course, play clean. Reduce the turnovers. Reduce the stupid penalties. Right? Reduce the negative plays. And then play complementary football. That's what all middle-of-the-road teams aspire to do. To win games, as many as they can, playing complementary football. That's the smartest way to do it. The conditions have not been ripe for the Giants to play much complementary football. Very often this year, they've played uncomplimentary football. Just like I've said before, I created a term. They are the most unclutched Giants team that I have ever seen in my 42 years of covering this franchise. All right, Antonio Vidal. Looks like They're just going through the motions right now with offseason plans already scheduled. Antonio, I would totally disagree with that. And here's why I say it. And again, I'm going to give you some evidence that you can go to, and maybe you'll change your opinion. If you don't, that's okay. We can agree to disagree. I was in the locker room yesterday after the game. I was right up there in front with Darius Slayton, who was furious. Dexter Lawrence, who was so angry that on camera he cussed 3 times. That's not a guy who doesn't care. Slayton, not a guy who doesn't care. Brian Burns, not a guy who doesn't care. As we went through it, John Runyon, Jermaine Illuminor, Tyrone Tracy, kept going around to different guys in the locker room. If you were standing a foot and a half away from these guys, looked into their eyes, listened to them speak with the emotion that they had, the ferocity that they had, and the seriousness that they had, oh, believe me, I think if I just put you in front of Dexter Lawrence for 15 seconds and let you tell him what you just said, you would not need me to change your mind. Let me just say that. Dexter Lawrence would do that for you in a very quick heartbeat. But, Antonio, I think some of that stuff from the post-game locker room yesterday is up on the Giants official website. I think. I'm not sure exactly how much of it or which of the players are there. But by all means, please go look at that stuff. Please do. Because that will give you a better understanding of the feeling that was permeating through that locker room. I will tell you, after yesterday's game, I ran into more players who were not just angry or mad, but furious. Furious. Literally like breathing fire, infuriated at what is going on. That is not the emotion that guys usually present if they are going through the motions or don't care or can't wait till the end of the season is here. That's just not the way human nature is. The Focus says hello, and I say hello to you, Focus. Thanks for joining us again tonight. All right, let's see here. We got Gary Henry. Gettleman got it right about Saquon Barkley. Hall of Fame running back, but not for the Giants. Gary, there was never any doubt. Anyone who knew something about football could see that Saquon Barkley was an offensive weapon. He wasn't just a run-of-the-mill running back. This guy was a true superstar. He gave the Giants a superstar season as a rookie. He gave the Giants a superstar season in 2022. His other seasons with the Giants, he was just a star. You know, because of the dysfunction of the offensive line, because of the injuries that absolutely limited him, he was not a superstar during those other seasons. But he gave the Giants 2 true superstar seasons. And now he's given the Philadelphia Eagles a super duper star season. Now, let's remember something. He has had some wear on his tires, and he has had some significant injuries, which means as Philadelphia navigates the final month and a half or so of this season, they need to make sure that he's healthy and that he can continue to produce at the superstar level that he's got in his body. And then on top of that, they need to know that he can still be that superstar and has enough gas left in his tank during the postseason to make whatever postseason run the Eagles plan on making. That's always been the gamble. They were the highest bidder for Barkley's services when he went free agent. And he was very quick to take the highest bidder. That's exactly what he did. Okay, he took the most money he could get. A lot of people would do that. That's what he did. It also happened to be with a team that has one of the best offensive lines in football, which meant that his job was going to be a lot easier than it was during his time with the Giants. And as long as he could stay healthy, he was going to be an MVP candidate. I've said all along, since he was the number 2 overall pick in the draft, without question, he is a superstar talent, a headache player who causes nightmares for other teams' coaches. Without a doubt, no matter what year, talent-wise, one of the top 3 running backs in the game. But again, he's not a running back. He's an offensive weapon. And Dave Gettleman was absolutely right for taking Saquon Barkley. The problem was the Giants made a slew of moves to enhance their offensive line while Barkley was here, and most of those moves failed for one reason or another. You get an opportunity to get a guy like Barkley in the draft, you absolutely grab him. Because he is one in a decade, maybe, that you're going to get somebody who is that spectacular and that talented. Absolutely, you go and get him. But now you got to make sure that if he's going to be here for half a dozen years or more, you got to make sure now you give him the proper guys that he can work with so that he's going to be able to do his thing. And what did the Giants do? They made so many transactions. I could plaster this back wall behind me with the list of offensive line transactions they made, trying to find the right guys and the right combinations that were going to provide Saquon Barkley with a good enough offensive line to allow him to be an annual superstar. And the only reason that it didn't work is because the Giants' offensive line candidates continued to falter. One after the other, injured, retired, did not work out well, could not play to his potential, whatever it was. The list of candidates that were supposed to be the offensive line enhancements kept dropping like flies each and every year. The plan was good. It was logical. Get the superstar. And over the next couple of years, make sure we've got the wall to build in front of him. And boy, they put a bunch of bricks in front of him, and the bricks kept crumbling and cracking and turning into a pile of dust. That was not Saquon Barkley's fault. And it was not management's fault either. Every time that a brick crumbled or cracked or broke, they went and they got another one. They didn't stick with the same bricks that weren't working out. They kept trying. Let's go. Get somebody else in here. We got this superstar running back here. All right, what are we going to do? We got to build the line. All right, this guy. Oh, it's not working out. All right, boom, go. New guy. Boom, 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 boom. Try these guys. Didn't work. Boom. Okay, next group. They tried so many transactions of offensive linemen, and really, outside of the 2022 season, after his rookie season when he just exploded because he was just that new and that unbelievable, the 2022 offensive line was the one and only, really, when you get down to it, decent offensive line that Barkley had as his Giants career progressed. That was the only one. And he gave them a superstar year and helped them win a playoff game with Daniel Jones. So now he's got a line in Philadelphia that is better than any individual line the Giants ever had during Barkley's Giants career. Stands to reason he was going to be not just a superstar, but a super duper star. And that's exactly what he is. And the only thing that's going to stop him, besides the unexpected crumbling of the Eagles' offensive line, which I don't see happening, is if Barkley should get another one of those injuries that also contributed to his limitations. And that is completely unpredictable. And that's why you have to say the Eagles took a big risk. They rolled the dice because injuries are never predictable, especially running backs who have had injuries before. And if that risk catches up to the Philadelphia Eagles before the end of this season, that will be a shame for both them and for Saquon Barkley. But if the injury bug does not catch up to him until after the Eagles' season is over, the sky's the limit for how far he could take them. I am not surprised that he is an NFL MVP candidate. No, not at all. That's why you pick the guy with the second overall pick in the draft, because he's that special. Thank you, Gary, very much. Appreciate the comment. What do we have here? The Focus says, I must admit I was really concerned about the size, as you mentioned, when watching him play. I think if he wants to seriously contend for a job in the NFL quarterback, he needs to put on significant weight. I'm assuming we're talking about Tommy DeVito? From the other day, I believe. Because you would ask me, I think, what are the questions about Tommy DeVito? Well, we haven't seen enough of him in the NFL. Remember, three wins and 3 losses as a starter last year. Then some preseason games. So what did we say? Solid arm, but not the deepest arm. Can make a lot of throws. Can make most of the throws. Had some really good throws yesterday in the second half. In particular, I love the back shoulder throw to Malik Neighbors along the right sideline. That was dynamite. I'd love to see that pass play work more into the playbook. I thought Daniel Jones had a good second half, by the way. In fact, I did write his numbers down, and I wanted to mention that to you folks because I mentioned it today on Big Blue Kickoff. It wasn't a shiny silver lining, but kind of a muted silver lining. Tommy DeVito, in the second half of the game, and I know the Buccaneers pulled back on their blitz. They only blitzed 50% of the time in the second half. They had a 23-0 lead at the break, so I understand that. But Tommy DeVito was 18 for 26 for 158 yards and had drives of 65, 68, and 56 yards in a stretch of 5 drives in the second half. So now, if you want to, just for laughs and giggles, double the numbers, because that was his second half totals. You know, you're looking at a guy who threw for over 300 yards and would have completed 36 out of 52 passes. Just to give you a little kind of perspective on it. And I know the Bucs had cut back on their blitz packages and they were playing a lot of prevent. I understand all of that. But Tommy DeVito threw some very nice balls yesterday. He was tough. He was hard-nosed. He made a bunch of good throws. When they knocked him out of the game in the fourth quarter and knocked the wind out of him, and he had to come out for a play, he got right back up and went right back in the game, even though the Giants were getting shellacked, and there was no reason for Tommy DeVito to go back in. He went back in on 2 plays later. He missed 1 play. Drew Lock went in, and then Tommy DeVito was right back out there. And then when the Giants got the ball back again for one final time with like a minute to go, Tommy DeVito was out there again. Tommy DeVito showed that he was Jersey tough, that he's got some leadership skills. He showed that he could throw a nice ball. And he also showed that he's a guy who's never going to lay down. I use the Jake LaMotta analogy. And for you older folks, you know what I'm talking about. For you younger folks, think of the movie Raging Bull that starred the great Robert De Niro. And there's a trilogy of fights that Jake LaMotta, he's a former middleweight champion. There's a trilogy of fights that he had with Sugar Ray Robinson, one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters maybe ever in the history of professional boxing. And in the movie, there's a scene where LaMotta is getting absolutely brutalized. I mean, he's just a mess. The bumps, the bruises, the cuts. His face looks like a pizza pie. Ray Leonard, Sugar Ray Robinson, not Ray Leonard, Sugar Ray Robinson has just peppered his face into oblivion. Had him leaning against the ropes. He's just a mess. And the referee wants to stop the fight. And Jake LaMotta comes over, and this De Niro in the movie, he goes, "You didn't get me down, Ray. You didn't get me down." Because it's all about that pride and that toughness. For LaMotta, for him not to go down and to be knocked out by Ray Robinson in that fight meant everything to him. The guts and the fire, the fortitude that came from within. That's what Tommy DeVito showed yesterday. He got sacked 4 times and was hit 9 times on pass plays. That doesn't account for the running plays when he also scrambled or ran on a quarterback option. He got battered. He got knocked around. But they didn't get him down because he popped right back up. So I thought Tommy DeVito took a small step in a positive direction with the Giants yesterday in the first of his 7-game tryout, if you will, to see what his ceiling might be for the football Giants as they go into the 2025 season, as they figure out, could he be a number 2 quarterback in this league? Could he be a bridge quarterback in this league? Or could he potentially be a competitor for the starting job in this league? Those are the 3 levels in order that Tommy DeVito would like to ascend to. Where does his arrow stop? Where does his elevator stop? I don't know. Realistically, probably at the first level, which says he can be a solid number 2. But who's to say it can't go higher than that? Because there are 2 more rungs higher. And maybe, just maybe, over the next 6 games, Tommy DeVito keeps pushing the button on that elevator. But right now, he took one small step above where he was, at least the way I saw it, and the way Carl Banks saw it, because Carl Banks and I were at the lunch table today, and we had this very conversation that if there was any silver lining in the Giants' defeat yesterday, it's that Tommy DeVito actually took a small step forward. And so did Evan Neal. Yeah, I know. You people out there, a bunch of you just want to keep, knocking him to the ground too. Well, Evan Neal got burned on a sack on the Giants' first drive of the game. It was an inside move, and he got beat off the snap. He was slow on the reaction time on the get-off, and he got beat to the inside on a sack. The rest of the game, you didn't hear Evan Neal's name once, did you? You didn't hear him call for a penalty. You did not hear him victimized on a sack. You did not hear his name. Because Evan Neal has now put back-to-back pretty good games on tape. Yeah. Played pretty well against Carolina. And he played pretty well again yesterday. Evan Neal is already taking those small steps back to being a reliable Giant starter again. Now, it's a long way to go. Please do not misinterpret what I'm saying to you. I'm not telling you that Evan Neal is a finished product or that week 1 in 2025 he's going to be a starter. But that's the goal. That's the goal. He's got 6 more games to show consistency and perhaps even some more improvement. And if he could do that over the next 6 games, and he's off to a good start, folks, admit it. Even if you don't want to, admit it. Evan Neal has surprised you in his first 2 starts of the season. And if he keeps that up over the next 6 weeks, oh yeah, he's going to start for the Giants in 2025. Contrary to what everybody thought when they tried to throw in the towel on him. All right. Focus, thank you so much for the thoughts. Cody Dunbar says, Paul, what would you do if you was the owner? I would do exactly what John Mara is going to do. Try to take emotion out of it. Have you any idea how hard that is for me as a Paisan? Right here, it practically says emotion right on the sleeve. You guys know me. I've been doing this forever. I have fun with that aspect of my personality, and I hope you guys do too. Some people want to laugh at me. That's fine. Some people want to laugh with me. That's fine too. I'm me, and I live with that, and I enjoy it. But I'll tell you something. The one thing that emotions do for you, it's a double-edged sword. When things go well and you enjoy your environment, you enjoy your job, it's wonderful. But those emotions also can flip when things don't go well and you feel pain and agony and disgust. And then all of a sudden now, the other side of that sword starts scraping on your skin and drawing some blood. Cody, if I were the Giants owner, I would do exactly what John Mara pledges to do, because this is what his father, Wellington Mara, told him to do many, many years ago when he was still alive and owned this team. And that is, do not make an emotional decision, especially an important decision regarding the football team. Wait until the end of the year, when the schedule is over and it's been put to bed. Take all of the evidence that you've collected. Get as much firsthand evidence as you can. Make sure you are around, you're visible, you go to practice, you listen, you see, you hear. You make sure the players know that you're there on game day. Let everybody know that you're there as the owner to support them, but you're also there to get as much firsthand information as is possible, so that when you collect all that data at the end of the season, you can sit down, take a deep breath, let the emotions kind of wash away from you and down the drain, get those emotions out of there, and then make whatever you believe to be the most rational, logical, and well thought out decision that won't get tainted by emotion, whether that emotion is joyous or disgusted. Cody, that's my answer. That's what I would do. I would not make a decision today on November 25th, 2024. This is not the time to make a decision about any of this. I would wait till the end of the season. Okay. Hey, how about this? Jordan Zamiti. We've had him before. He says, join late, so sorry. Hey, don't worry about it, Jordan. Look, I've already been here now for over an hour, and I'm going to take this sucker until at least the top of the hour. We got over 600 people joining us live on the program, and I appreciate you folks. Anybody who wants to come in on a video call or an audio call, if you're joining us late, there's the link at the bottom of the screen. We'll take a video call if you like. We'll take an audio call if you like. Or you can get in on the chat. Your choice. I'll certainly take us until at least 9 o'clock. Okay? All right, what do you got, Jordan? What can Dable do to keep this locker room and motivate players to want to keep playing? Jordan, look, as Brian Dable said, it's not even what Brian Dable can do. Joe Shane said at his bye-week press conference, the Giants have 41 of their 53 active players under contract for next year. Now that changes every day when they make a roster move, promote a practice squad guy. Daniel Jones, of course, was released. Injured guys go to IR. But you get the gist of the number, right? It's about 80% of this young team, one of, I think, the 5 youngest in the NFL, that's got the most rookie snaps by percentage of any team in the league. They're under contract for next year. And these are young, supposedly developing players, of which we're now witnessing a lot of growing pains, which all young developing players have to go through, or at least most of them do. Not everyone, but most of them. So what you have here is that the general manager believes he's on the right track with the talent of the roster, the level of talent, the depth of talent. He knows he still has holes to fill. That's why he didn't make any predictions about playoffs at the beginning of the year. I think I told you guys at the beginning of the season, my number for the Giants was 8 or 9 wins. I thought they would hover around the 500 mark for the whole season, and ultimately 8 or 9 wins, and I did not think that 8 or 9 wins was going to get them into the playoffs. But I certainly thought they'd be in contention for the 3rd wild card going into January. That's what I thought of this talent. I still think this talent is better than the results that we've seen on the field. So here's what I'm telling you. If these young players want to have a future, Brian Dable doesn't have to do anything to motivate them. They just got to look in the mirror. They got to know that they're being evaluated over the next 6 games. They've been evaluated all season, and they're going to continue to be evaluated. I, for one, believe that when you have 80% of those guys under contract for next year, you've got them in a very precarious situation. Because with what you have, you're counting on those guys, and you're telling those guys that we believe in you, we're developing you, and you're supposed to be a big part of this team next year. If you don't put out, now you're out in the street. And what does that tell every other team in the National Football League? If a young, developing team had you under contract, they didn't give you up because you were out of years. Your deal was up, you were an unrestricted free agent, and you decided to go somewhere else. That's not a knock on anybody. But it is a knock on a player if teams cut you with time left on your contract. That's a knock on a player. That's not good. That's a blemish. So if Joe Shane tells you he's got 80% of this roster under contract for next year. Those guys who don't put out, who don't motivate themselves over the rest of this season, are going to wind up cut or traded if they can be traded. They'll be off of this team, but mostly they'll be cut. That's a black mark for those guys. Because now you go out onto the free agent market and you say, well, Giants cut me. Well, why'd they cut you? Last 6 games of the year when the team was out of it, you played like Humpty Dumpty. That's not good. All of a sudden, you've now lowered your free agent value and your power to try to land another spot with somebody else. You get cut by a team, especially if you're a young player, and they're telling you they want you to be part of their future. You have everything to play for. The coach does not need to motivate you. Jordan, I can't make it any more simple than that. Okay? Patrick, very true, didn't even think of that. I'm not sure exactly what it is you're referring to, but it was probably an earlier question that I hope I answered thoroughly enough that maybe it gave you a better picture. If that's the case, you're very welcome. That's why we're here to do this show. All right. Oh, okay. King Harlem has a difference of opinion, and that's fine. King, no problem. Love you, really do. This team has got worse. 2022 season was more of a let me reel the people in before I show my true colors situation. This roster horrible and then saying it nice. Well, King, here's what I'm going to tell you. I look back at the 2022 team. I would say if we went unit by unit, right? All right. That was a better version of Daniel Jones than the Giants got this year. Absolutely. Saquon Barkley, superstar year. Giants, running backs, not having a superstar year. Tyrone Tracy's an exciting young rookie. He has had the primary running back responsibility duties for 7 games and has had 3 100-yard efforts in those 7 games. He's also had a couple of critical fumbles. And I say critical only because they were deep in opponents' territory in the last 2 contests. So, yes, quarterback, better performance in 22. Running back, better performance in 22. Tight end, I don't know that tight end was any better in 22. But if you want to call it a draw, I'll let you do that. The wide receivers are much better on this team than they were in 22. That's not even close. I mean, you can't debate that one. Kicker's the same. Okay. Offensive line. I think the offensive line is better, and everybody seems to believe that. Even the analytics folks are saying the Giants' offensive line is improved. Okay. Where else do we go? Defensive line and linebackers, front 7. Well, no question about that. Giants' pass rush is better than it was in 2022. They're still having trouble stopping the run. They had trouble stopping the run then too. But Brian Burns, just the addition of Brian Burns by himself makes this front 7 better than it was in 2022. Bobby Okereke by himself makes the inside linebacker spot better than it was in 2022. Secondary-wise, Dory Jackson had a really nice year. And Xavier McKinney was hurt. Um, this secondary is a lot younger. They've gone through more growing pains, and they've made a lot of mistakes. So the production of that secondary, better. Not potential. There's certainly more young talent in this secondary than there was in 2022. Phillips, Nubin, Flott, Banks. I like the talent of those guys an awful lot. There's more talent, young talent. That's the problem. It's young talent. So they've made a lot more mistakes. I mean, you had Fabian Moreau starting at one corner in 2022. He was a stopgap if I ever knew one. So I'm sorry, King. I've gone through it, and no, I don't think so. And I haven't even gone through the rest of the 53. But I think the 2022 team, it's certainly younger. That's without dispute. There's no question about that. It is younger, and there's more upside. So, again, we're going to agree to disagree. If you want to feel as you do, you're welcome to feel that. I would say I'm on the other side of that fence. And I think it's pretty obvious to me, but again, we can agree to disagree. That's okay. That's why everybody has an opinion. All right, what do we got here? The focus. I like Tommy D, but I think if he wants to seriously contend for a quarterback job in the NFL, you need to put on some significant weight. Well, his frame is a little smallish. Now, there have been guys who have had smaller frames before and succeeded in this league. Drew Brees comes immediately to mind. Doug Flutie. I mean, he had a small frame. So even Baker Mayfield is not really that big. So, but I hear what you're saying. And yes, well, this is why Tommy DeVito is in this position that he's in now. He's been given a golden opportunity to earn more than being a number 3 NFL quarterback. How many guys get that? Very few get that chance. Usually if you're a number 3 quarterback in this league, you're hovering between the practice squad and being number 3. And you probably get stuck between one of those two spots for a few years until people forget about you. Tommy DeVito has a golden, no, let me check that. Tommy DeVito has a platinum opportunity to raise his stock. He took a small step forward yesterday. I believe that. As someone who's watched this game a long time, he took a small step forward yesterday. But he's going to need to continue taking steps forward if he is going to get to that next rung on the ladder. And yes, the focus, I would agree with you. I agree with you. I do think he will have to get stronger and will have to thicken out his frame a little bit, especially because he is fearless. He's not afraid to take hits, and he's not afraid to run. In that regard, he's a lot like Daniel Jones. So, yeah, I'd like to see him get stronger. And I'm sure that will be another one of his goals, just like it was Daniel Jones's goals over the years with the Giants. If you ever got to see him, he did get thicker. He added bulk. As he matured physically, he also added bulk so that he could hold up. And if Tommy DeVito has a opportunity to stick around in this league for several years, that would be a good piece of advice to give him. And I'm sure that nutritionists and the weight and strength and weight and conditioning program guys have told him that. But that doesn't happen in one day. And again, he's got enough on his plate right now as he tries to raise his level from being a number 3. All right, let's see. Oh, what do we have here? Elo H. If Aaron Thomas didn't have to go to IR, how much do you think it would have affected the outcome of some of these games? We have a number of injuries on the offensive line at different times also. How much depth is needed for this position? Well, here's the thing. I don't know exactly how many games it would have impacted. But what I will say this, Elo, because the circumstances, you've heard me joke on this program before, as well as Big Blue Kickoff, and even the Giants pre- and post-game shows, about in the first chunk of this season, it seemed like somebody had a voodoo doll, a Giants voodoo doll in their basement, and had about 1,000 pins and just kept sticking them in the voodoo doll to do all these funky things to ruin this team's chances. But there's little doubt that the offensive line, while appreciably better, has still had some inconsistencies. They are still part of some of what's gone wrong. They're kind of a middle-of-the-pack offensive line right now. As my magic word is, if you know me, the magic word is functional. Get me a functional offensive line. I think that's where the Giants are right now. I think they're a functional offensive line, although there are moments during this season where they have slipped backwards. Again, consistency. Well, they rebuilt the damn thing again this year. You had to know it wasn't going to be as consistent as you would like. So here's what I would say. You go into 2025, you got Jermaine Illuminor, and you got Andrew Thomas. And if Evan Neal keeps doing what he is doing, oh my goodness. Now you've got yourself three quality starting offensive linemen. Okay? Your bookend tackles. Illuminor has been extremely versatile in his career. I would suggest maybe he moves into guard. Greg Van Roten's on a 1-year contract, so I don't know what he plans to do. I think he's 34 years old. He's been in this league a long time. So maybe Illuminor becomes the guard since he's played guard in the NFL before. And you have Thomas and Neal as your bookend tackles. John Michael Schmitz has been inconsistent in his second season in the league. He made a lot of rookie mistakes and had rookie inconsistencies in year 1. He's had some inconsistencies again in year 2. There have been a few games he's played really well. There have been some other games, for example, yesterday, not so much. So he's got to get his playing level smoothed out. And then you've got, I would think John Runyon is going to be here for a bit. So you could be looking at, I would think, if you really wanted to look that far ahead, Thomas, Runyon, JMS, Illuminor, and Neal as your starting 5 in week 1 of 2025. I don't think that's out of the question. At least not after the first 2 weeks of Evan Neal's demo. He's just got to keep it up. You got to see consistency out of Neal, and you got to keep him away from that stupid injury bug that has done so much to derail the Giants' plans at multiple positions over the years. Okay. It's incredible to date. The highlight of the season, Simmons blocked field goal. Yeah. Isaiah Simmons blocked field goal in Seattle. Since that point, it's been all downhill, Big Blue. Who'd have thunk it? Unbelievable. Oh, King Harlem wants to chime in again. Giants team is a headache. It's stressful. Has to be some major changes because this team has gotten worse. They chose Jones over Barkley. Neither one is now here. Well, that part's true. Neither one is now here. I'm not going to go into an hour of explaining the business angles and why they had to do it the way they did. But from a business perspective and understanding the way that the numbers were set up, the Giants played that exactly the way they should have. It was the most logical, most rational way to do it. Unfortunately, as is always the case with 2020 hindsight, when things don't work out as planned, no matter how good your plan was, right? You got a great recipe. All right, I'm going back to food again, King, because I am a paisan and I love to talk food analogies. You got a great recipe for a meal. You follow that recipe because, boy, you got that from your folks or your grandparents or your aunts or your uncles. Family recipe for 95 years. This is the greatest dinner that my family's been serving for generations. And I've got that recipe, and I know that's the right recipe. And I got all the right ingredients. And I followed that recipe exactly like I was supposed to. And then you take that meal off the stove, you put it on the plate, and you take that first bite, and you're like, oh, it didn't taste the same. What happened? Doesn't mean the recipe was wrong. Doesn't mean the recipe was broken. It just meant that things happened somehow, some way, in the process of cooking it. The meal just didn't come out the way it was planned. Well, King, that's what happened with the Giants between Barkley and Jones. They had the right recipe. They played this out exactly like they were supposed to, and things went awry. And that's why, in retrospect, people get upset and angry, because they simply look at the result and they forget to go back and look at the recipe, which was perfect, made perfect sense, was logical, was correct. It was absolutely the right way to go. But because the result didn't turn out, what are you going to do? You're going to go back and take that recipe that's been in your family for generations, and you're going to burn it? You're going to throw it out? You're going to tell your relatives your recipe's terrible? You're not going to do that. You're going to go back to them and say, well, I followed the recipe. I did everything I was supposed to do, and dinner turned out bad. And they're going to say, yeah, but King, it wasn't the recipe. Because it wasn't. They know it wasn't. And you know it wasn't too. But you're just sour because the meal turned out bad. So on that one, King, unfortunately, there is no agreeing to disagreeing on that one. The Giants had the right recipe. It just didn't turn out well. But I do appreciate the thought. All right. What do we have here? John. Says this year, John Peruch, or Peruk. I'm not sure if you pronounce the H or as a CH as a K. This year we have better talent than we did 22 and 23 and less injuries, but we are playing badly. John, no one's going to disagree with you. On this, everybody can agree. John continues, I read, in my opinion, this falls to the coaching staff to fix or they go. That's going to be one of the evaluations that has to be made at the end of the season. No one's disputing that. You're absolutely right. If Joe Shane decides at the end of this season that indeed this roster is as talented as he believes it to be. And it is better than they've had the last couple of years. If he still feels that way after the next 6 weeks, now I feel that way still now. I may not feel that way in 6 weeks, but my opinion doesn't count for diddly. It's up to Joe to make that decision. Thank goodness he's the GM. I can't take the stress. I would never want to be an NFL general manager. You guys know I detest fantasy football. I will never play it. I have no desire to be a general manager. None. Too much pressure, too much stress, too much agita. All right, so, yeah, if Joe decides that this roster has the talent and has underachieved, he's going to go to Brian Dable and he's going to say, okay, explain to me what you think and what kind of changes can we make, because the bulk of this roster is coming back next year. That is definitely a possibility, John. But we got to figure out over the next 6 weeks if the foundation of that scenario is what it is now, or at least what it has been the first half of the season. This is why it's so important for those players to motivate themselves, because they're in position to enhance that narrative or break that narrative down, which is only going to be to their detriment. All right, John, thank you. Focus says, I think DJ's game is best when you heavily scheme him running the football. All right, I think DJ's game is best when you heavily scheme him in running the football. I think he can be very successful as a starter elsewhere, but the style of play has a heavy risk on his long-term health. You guys know how I feel about this. I don't think you should ever have more than 4 planned runs for a quarterback in any given game. Now, I'm not hard and fast on that rule, but that's kind of where I am. I'm not even so sure that I want that many. I am a pocket passer admirer. I am not a big fan of guys who run to run. Fran Tarkenton, for you older folks, you know that Tarkenton was the first great scrambler in NFL history. And he ran and scrambled to throw the ball. He ran backwards, he ran horizontal, and it was all about escaping pressure to throw the ball downfield and complete the pass and make a play with his arm. Some of these running quarterbacks today, because of the RPOs, they're running to gain yardage. And when they go back there, they're running forward to gain yardage. If I were a general manager or a head coach, my quarterback would never lead my team in rushing at the end of the season, and he would certainly not rush for 1,000 yards. I want a pocket passer. Now, if he's got escapability, and I'm not talking mobility. Mobility is guys who are more apt to run with the ball. Escapability are quarterbacks who are more likely to move around to try to find time to throw the ball. I'm all for a pocket passer with escapability. That's my kind of guy. If I'm a general manager, that's who I'm drafting. That's who I'm signing. That's the guy. Now, Eli Manning was a pure pocket passer, and he really didn't have much escapability. But he was so good at what he did, he should be headed right to the Hall of Fame on the fast track. Daniel Jones, when he got to the Giants, I was always hoping that he would just be an escapability quarterback and not a mobility quarterback. But that's not a scenario we need to deal with anymore because he's not here. I hope the next Giants quarterback is a pocket passer with escape ability. I only say that because that's my preference. I don't know that Joe Shane feels that way, and I don't know that Brian Dable feels that way. I know this. Josh Allen, who was, when he came out of Wyoming, was my favorite quarterback in that draft. I was hoping that he would be more of an escapability quarterback and not one who would run as much. And over his time in Buffalo, I haven't checked the numbers lately, but I believe he has been running less than when he used to. All right. Patrick Clark, thank you. Just subscribed. Well, that's awfully kind. Appreciate that. 2022 season was actually so much fun looking back. Sure was. Really, really fun. Hope we could have another season like that within a few years. Well, Patrick, let me ask you a question. The thing that made that season so much fun is that it was so incredibly unexpected. And I would think that after what the Giants have put on tape this year, not too many people are going to expect them to be very good in 2025. And that's okay, because in recent years in the NFL, there's been a turnover of basically 5 playoff teams annually every year in the league. So, if the Giants should somehow in the offseason get a couple of very important players to do what they need to do, and suddenly, somehow, hypothetically, turn it around, it would be highly unexpected for anybody to think that the Giants would be a playoff team next year. I mean, look, after the 83 season, when Bill Parcells in his rookie year as a head coach with the Giants was 3-12-1, nobody expected the Giants to make the playoffs in 1984. No. Nobody did. Come on. Giants are 3-12-1. What, are you kidding me? 3-12-1? They got no chance. So much for that. Bill Parcells got him into the playoffs in 1984. I remember I told my pop when Parcells took over, I said, I bet you in 3 years he's going to have this team in the playoffs. I was so impressed with him. He did it in 2. You know, that's the part that a lot of people don't understand. Sometimes it's the unexpected stuff that's the most fun. It really is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you tell me. You could hit me up here on the chat if you like. You tell me. In all honesty, wasn't the 2022, wasn't that season so incredibly exciting because it was so unexpected? Isn't that what made it so great? If you knew that they were going to be playoff contenders, would you have been as overjoyed with 9-7-1? Probably not. Anyway, so the unexpected part of it is what makes it really exciting and really fun and extra special. So think of it that way, Patrick. No one's going to expect the Giants to do anything next year. So if it does turn out to be another one of the 2022 kind of season, man, are you going to have a blast. All right, Patrick again says Super Bowl 1 in 32 years is on pace for average. So an exciting season is a huge win regardless. Yeah, Sure. Sure. Tank Parham says team was 9-7 when you're talking about one game. I don't understand what he means, but yes, the Minnesota playoff game in Minnesota, I was there on the sideline. That was absolutely incredible. I don't think the Minnesota fans will ever forget it, that's for sure. All their white hankies and their chants and their horns and their skull. No, I don't think they're going to forget it either, but for the wrong reasons. Of course, the Giants fans in 1997 also won't forget the playoff win that the Minnesota Vikings came from behind and beat the Giants in that playoffs as well, too. So there was kind of payback, I think, right? The 97 playoff game for the 2022 playoff game. But Tank, I'm not sure. I think you're trying to be a wise guy here. Just remember, Daniel Jones, 5 fourth quarter come from behind game-winning drives during the season to get to the 9 wins, and then did it again in the playoffs for 6. So if you're trying to be a wise guy and think that he only had one terrific game, well, I'm sorry, but your facts, sir, are not accurate. Ernest Fulton. Dable and Shane need to go right now, please. Well, you know, I already explained to you the method that ownership uses. They will compile data, and at the end of the season, they will sort through it and figure out what needs to be done. Mo Dog, hey Paul, in your honest opinion, what was the biggest mistake Joe Shane has made in his tenure so far? Wow. Biggest mistake so far. It's hard to talk about the draft because we always say you got to give 3 years for every draft before you can actually realistically grade them. So let me do something here for a second. Let me go back to the New York Giants draft in 2021. Okay? Let me just do that because it's not fair to grade the 22 or 23. No, I mean, we got to go to the 2022 draft. I'm sorry. Because it's not fair to grade the 23 or 24 drafts yet because they still have not had 3 years. So his first draft was 2022. So let me just start by looking at that. And let's see. Thibodeau, don't have a problem with that. Neal, story is still yet to be fully written. Don't have a problem with that. Wan'Dale Robinson, injury sidetracked him, but he's a starter. You know, for a team that starts 3 wide receivers in their formation, he's a starter. So don't have a problem with that. Azudu's been injured for most of his career. Cordell Flott, ditto, a lot of injuries sideline him. You get to the 4th round, you got Bellinger and Belton, both of whom are heavy rotational players. So, and in the 4th round, when you get a heavy rotational player, you're doing fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, it's not a spectacular grade, but it's a satisfactory grade. Micah McFadden in the 5th round. Guy's a starting linebacker, had over 100 tackles last year. DJ Davidson still on the team. Again, 5th round pick. So who's not here? Marcus McKeithen's not here, and Darian Beavers is not here. Beavers blew out his knee after having a sensational rookie training camp, and then came back to the practice squad the following year and never got that knee quite where it needed to be to win a spot on the roster. By the way, he was a 6th round pick. So, and McKeithen was a 5. Now, he didn't develop. I know they had very high hopes for him, but he had some injuries, but to be honest, I don't think the development was really there. But he's a 5th round pick. So I don't know that I have any huge disappointments that are legitimate. I mean, again, Rizzuto and Flott have been injured for large portions of their 3 years here. So, and they were third rounders. So it's really hard to really put a ding on him for those. All right, so that's the only draft that's worth talking about right now because those guys are in their third year. Okay. Free agency. Well, I'd have to go back and look at every transaction, every free agent transaction that the Giants made during the 22, 23, and 24 seasons to try to come up with somebody who is, glaring as a negative. Wow. I mean, do you think they should have done better with a backup quarterback? They'd signed Tyrod Taylor. And when Jones got hurt, Taylor came in, then he got hurt right away. He had such an injury history. When you sign a second string quarterback who has a significant injury history, that maybe isn't always the smartest thing to do because he's supposed to be called on if your first guy gets hurt, which means your second guy better be really, really reliable. Now, Tyrod Taylor's a really good guy and a pro's pro, and I do think he's got talent. But his injury history, that didn't make him the most reliable guy. And of course, he comes in and he gets hurt right away. So that was probably not a great signing. I'd have to go back. To be honest, Mo, I'd have to go back and really study it and get a really good look at every transaction, every free agent that was signed, and see, right now I'm so embedded in the middle of this season trying to figure out where they are, what they're doing, and trying to evaluate what's going on at the present time. It's just kind of difficult. It's hazy and foggy to even think about all the free agents that were signed in the last 3 years and try to pick out, the real blemishes. I think that's really difficult to do. Yeah, I kind of hesitate. I don't know. I guess Mark Lewinsky didn't really work out well. Would you want to go there? Would Lewinsky be the one that was probably, I would think, he started 16 games during the 2022 season, did help the Giants, to a playoff campaign. Obviously, last year was a total flameout. It didn't work out for him here. I don't know. Do you want to go with that one? He was an important free agent signing in 2022. And again, they did get one decent year out of him that helped them go to the postseason. So does that really qualify as a blemish? Because he didn't give them longevity. Anyway. Mo also says the offense looks the same with DeVito, and he's making $46 million less than Jones. Well, again, we've been telling you, we've been on this program now. Oh my goodness, we've been on well over an hour and a half. I'll go to 9:30, folks. Landmines and the grenades were going off all around this team. It wasn't just the quarterback. It was going on all over the place. They've done, for the most part, some really good things on defense, but they've also had landmines go off on defense too. And at the moment, by the way, on my spreadsheet, which I will call up right now, I have the Giants for a league-leading 29 drop passes, 27 of them. I gave them 2 yesterday. So 27 were on Daniel Jones's record. And 13 of those passes were beyond the sticks and would have been first downs. Just so you know. Would have kept a lot of drives alive. Would have potentially meant a lot more points. But when you drop passes on your quarterback, the results tend to go down. All right, what do we got here? Hey, Queensboro brother, how you doing? Says, let's see, been a minute since I was on the program. That's right, for sure. Has a question. Have you ever witnessed a $23 million injury clause in any player's contract in the history of the game? I don't know what the price was on the injury clause for Derek Carr with the Raiders and Russell Wilson with the Denver Broncos. Both of them had injury protection clauses in their deals, and both guys were pulled from their respective lineups when their teams faltered past the midpoint of their seasons. Daniel Jones just became the third guy in that list. What happened to him is no different than what happened to Russell Wilson with the Broncos or Derek Carr with the Raiders. So, in answer to the question, yes, I've seen the injury clause work before, and this is no different, but I do not recall what the price was, what the number was on the injury clause. My best advice to all quarterbacks in this league, because they're making incredible amounts of money, is don't put one of those injury clauses in your contract, because there is a chance that due to circumstances, you're going to find yourself in the same boat as Jones, Wilson, and Carr did. And you're going to wind up getting yourself cut or having to ask for your release. If you're that concerned about an injury clause in your contract, go to an independent insurer. And as you folks probably know, there are several insurance companies that do provide injury protection clauses and insurance policies, which you have to pay for, to professional athletes. There are even college athletes who take out injury insurance policies against their potential pro careers. So my suggestion to every quarterback, since you guys are making $30 and $40 million and $50 million on the average a year with all of your new contracts, my suggestion is learn from this. If you don't want circumstances to come back and bite you in the butt, you're making big money already. Don't put the injury protection clause in your contract with the team, because it's got a chance to put you in the soup. Go out, use some of that big money you got, and buy your own insurance policy against injury through one of the many insurance companies that do insure pro athletes in these very cases. Then you wouldn't have to worry about circumstances that may or may not be in your control, forcing a team to put you on the bench because they don't want to get jammed up with your insurance trigger. Novel idea, right, folks? We just talk logic on this show. That's all. We keep it real. We talk about things that make sense, things that are rational. Sometimes that's very hard for people to comprehend. All right. Let's see if we got anybody else on the chat here. Modog says, Paul, you've been around for a long time. Who was better, Daniel Jones or Dave Brown? Hands down, Daniel Jones. Not even close. Not even close. Cody Dunbar says, thanks for what you do as a Giants reporter. Cody, thank you. I appreciate your interest. Without the fans, there'd be no reason for conduits like myself, as a reporter, to be able to pass along information and to hopefully somehow not just inform you guys, but to hopefully enhance your enjoyment of the game. That's why jobs like mine exist. All right. Modog's back. Says Saquon's best season on the Giants was with Eli. Giants failed to build around him. Poor O-line, poor wide receivers, poor quarterback. His rookie season, as I said earlier, Mo, and I'm not sure how much you joined or how much you heard or when you joined in, Saquon Barkley had 2 superstar seasons for the Giants. His rookie season and his 2022 season. Those were his 2 superstar seasons. Okay? I absolutely agree with that. Now, you're right. His rookie season, there was not enough around him. Okay? There was not enough around him. And that stunk. So I think the thing about it is you have to go into the rest of the stuff around what happened in that year to figure it out. I mean, Eli could still play. I still think he had another year left in him, myself. And Barkley was sensational in spite of the fact they didn't have a tremendous amount in front of him. So, we will see. Let's see what else we got here. Looking through some of these. Cody says, I hope the Giants get a quarterback that puts fear in defenses. Well, the idea is to try to get enough of players as possible, and it's hard in today's game, but to get enough of players as possible who can not only be functional, but then cause headaches for the other team, which is the same as what you're talking about, saying puts fear in them. All right, I've got a couple minutes to go here. Geez, we've got over 700 people on the line. Jordan says, thanks for answering my question. Appreciate it. I appreciate you, man, for sure. What is your go-to meal for game day, says Cody. Cody Dunbar's back on us again, and that's not a football question. Cody, to be honest with you, I don't have a special meal for game day. Usually when we're in the press box, we eat whatever it is that they serve us for brunch or for a halftime snack. It could be a variety of things, but it's stadium food. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, we can't go anywhere. We got to get there hours before the game starts, and we're there hours after the game ends. So, okay. Joshua Axelbar? I think that's the name, Joshua. I'm not sure, but I think we got it right. You say, woke up, team sucks, Joe sucks as GM, Brian plays scared football. Like I say, everybody can have an opinion. That's fine. That's your opinion. You can have it. I don't resent you for it. All good. I disagree with you, but that's okay. And he adds, bottom line, they draft, should they come, we trash. Oh, okay. If you were a little bit more linguistically clear, I might be able to answer that one, but I really can't answer it the way you wrote it. All right. Tank says it's time to look for Andrew Thomas replacement. If he can't stay healthy, we have to stop saying he's one of the best in the league, the best abilities available. Tank, I won't disagree with you on that. You're right. The best ability is availability. And Andrew Thomas's injuries have started to pile up, and that is becoming a concern. I would be crazy not to think so. Got to stay on the field. Cody says, what player did you like covering your whole career as a reporter? Well, I've enjoyed everything about my career. I will tell you this. Uh, my favorite player since the time I've been working, but this is strictly just because I've become very friendly with him. I mean, Phil Simms is my favorite player because of the friendship that we have, but also the fact that I covered most of his career. He came in '79. I started my career in 1983. So, I covered the Parcells era, and Phil Simms was a tremendous part of that. And yeah, well, I know the whole family. I know Chris, and I know Matt real well. So yeah, I'd say Phil Simms, but I have so many favorites that they could fill up a stadium. To be honest with you. Um, Kenneth Perkins says, "Stop it! This team isn't built to win." Well, guess what, Kenneth? They're not winning right now, so no one's going to dispute your opinion on that because ultimately, without the W's, it's hard to put up a debate against you. I personally believe there's a lot more talent here than what the record indicates. I know Joe Shane feels that way, but the record right now is something that makes that argument rather moot. So we'll just agree to disagree on an opinion there. I don't think there is a factual answer. It's strictly a subjective one. So we are both actually allowed to feel as we do. All right, let's see. King Harlem says, let me ask you a serious question. What the comment neighbor said Sunday, are you sure without a shadow of a doubt he won't be traded away? I don't think so. I mean, Jerry Reese used to say, the former Giants GM, never say never, right? That's what he used to say. No, I don't think so. I know this. Brian Dable said he talked to him. He appreciates his desire and his attitude and his mentality and his drive, understood his frustration, but does wish that such comments would be kept in house. He said he did chat with him yesterday and this morning. I don't have any reason to believe he's going to be traded. No, I don't. And besides, the trading deadline is already passed, so I don't know if you're talking about like offseason. I still don't think so. Down the road, could it happen? Anything's possible down the road with any player. But it would take a variety of circumstances for something like that to happen. Okay, let's see. Kenneth Perkins says Shane and Dable didn't do their jobs by building something that's sustainable. Actually, that's exactly what it is they're trying to do. So, Kenneth Perkins says, you're right on the O-line. Okay, so we agree on that. And he also says Andrew Thomas is injury prone. Well, he certainly had enough of injuries. So that key word that starts with I is getting a bit worrisome. Kenneth adds another one. Barkley was a true star though, and you're getting rid of stars. How does that make you better? Well, it's because of free agency and the salary cap in the NFL and the rules that they have, which are designed to pry guys away from you and to promote parity and mediocrity. I have said for many years, I love the NBA salary cap because you can go over your salary cap to re-sign your own players, or at least one of your own with the bird rights. I think the NFL should have a similar rule so that you would not have to have superstars ripped away because the salary cap destroys your opportunity to keep certain guys. But even in baseball, there's a luxury tax. The salary cap is soft. There's a luxury tax. You pay a luxury tax for going over the cap. But if you want to and you're willing to put the money in, you could do it. In football, you can't. The salary cap is hard. You get to that cap, boom, you're stuck. Nothing you can do. I don't like that rule at all. K-Max says, come on, Giants are the worst team in NFL with GM in over his head coach that has lost locker room, and quarterback has no identity. Okay, K-Mac, again, it's a subjective opinion, not based in fact, simply an opinion. Okay. Christine says, good night. I say good night back to you. I'm trying to get out of here, but I got so many of these things I got to get to. Jordan Zamiti says, yes, season 2022 was extra exciting because it was so unexpected for sure. And that's the point. All right. Oh, K-Mac's trying to get in some more here. 2022 season was fool's gold and set us back years. I find your 25 expectations embarrassing and sad. I pray Mr. Mara cleans house. Well, I'm not expecting anything for 25. Please, K-Mac, people need to listen a lot more carefully and closely. What I'm simply saying is, after the 2024 season that the Giants have had, which has really not been very good at all. In fact, it's been downright poor. The results have not been good, right? No one is going to expect the Giants to be anywhere near a playoff team next year. I think that's pretty clear. You could put that down probably in pen right now. If they do somehow find a way to turn it around, it will be a mega unexpected season and therefore incredibly exhilarating. That's what I said. I didn't tell you they're going to go to the playoffs in 2025. They've certainly got work to do to make that happen. But if it does, man, oh man, those turnarounds are really, really thrilling for the fan base. Kenneth Perkins says Saquon carried the load in 2022. I said that was one of his superstar seasons. Mo Dog, how many times did DJ pass in those fourth quarter comebacks? Answer, not much. That's because he was making calls at the line that got the Giants into better plays. When he had options on run and pass options, he would get up to the line, see what he saw, and if you go back, you'll see there's a lot of audibles going on in those fourth quarters because Jones had the intelligence to see what was going on, opted out of bad plays, and opted into runs, which many times Saquon Barkley turned into a big play, which meant that Jones made the right selection at the snap. Didn't know that, did you, Mo? That's why I'm telling you. All right. K-Mac says Jones' contract was easily Shane's biggest mistake. Again, subjective. Grew up watching LT and the Giants in the 80s, says K-Mac. This current regime team makes me sick. Embarrassing. Okay, well, again, opinions, everybody can have them. Billboard Bills, if we can some way to get the defense, offense, and special teams to at least play to their potential, we would have a game to watch and stop with stupid penalties and pass out, stick 'em, ha, ha, ha. Well, yeah, they outlawed stick 'em, I think in the 70s it was. I remember that stuff. Man, it looked like dirty, rancid peanut butter that these guys, remember Lester Hayes from the Oakland Raiders? They would reach into the bucket and grab all this stuff and slime it all over their forearms from their fingertips all the way up to their elbows. Woo-wee! That stuff was nasty. Appreciate your answer to my question, says Queensboro brother. Have a great night. Absolutely. He says he has a food question next go around. All right. Oh, got a couple more here I got to get to. All right. Connor Well, Paul, do you think that Theo's drops are something to be concerned about or just rookie troubles? I hope it's just rookie jitters because during training camp, he had the softest hands. He was catching everything that was thrown his way. and got people really excited about his receiving skills. And I think I've got him down for 4 legit drops so far this season, and that's way too many for the number of passes who've been thrown his way. All right, the focus says, I love what TB did with their fullback position on goal line. Any chance we can experiment with Dexter Lawrence? I don't think that's going to happen, but I know, Vita Vey. Yeah, I know. I saw it. Billboard Bills, can we bring back LT Banks, Strahan, OC, and Tuck? Yeah, that'd be wonderful. I don't think any of those guys want to suit up right now, though. All right. K-Mac says, thanks, appreciate it for letting me rant. No problem. Hey, that's what we're here for, too. Happy Thanksgiving to all, says K-Mac, and I say ditto. Same thing to Jordan Zamiti. Happy Thanksgiving. And finally, Paw Patrol says, last one of the day, as we finally wrap this thing up, says, Paw Patrol says, worried about Chasey's fumbleitis. He really good, big upside, high and tight, Tiki. Yes, indeed. Tiki Barber, Joe Morris, both guys who had a little bit of trouble very early in their careers holding on to the football, and they both fixed them enough to become all pros or at least Pro Bowl players on teams that won a whole bunch of games. Folks, that is going to do it. I expected to do an hour on this off night. Again, we're here usually every Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. For me to do this now on a Monday night on such short notice and change our day this week because of the holiday was certainly something very, very unique. We got a really good audience, a really good response. I appreciate every one of you for participating in the program. I wish you a happy holiday, Thanksgiving feast, and all kinds of turkey or whatever else it is that you decide to eat. And enjoy, hopefully, the Giants-Cowboys game on Thursday as well. And we will be back on Friday with the Big Blue Breakdown, Game Balls and Gassers, as we evaluate the best and the worst of what happened with the Giants' offense, defense, and special teams during the Dallas Cowboys game. And we'll get to that on Friday. Taped episode of the program. We don't take calls on that one. We don't take chats on that one. And then we'll be back with another live program a week from Wednesday. Once again, that'll do it for this edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. It is part of the New York Giants on SI Media Network here on the YouTube channel. We thank you so much for being with us. I'm Paul Dottino. Take care, everybody.